Welcome into Steelers Talk. I'm your host, Jack Sperry. Today, I have 10 ways that the Pittsburgh Steelers, as an organization, is moving in the right direction right now, because it's not all positive, no matter how much pessimism you see on Steelers Twitter. But to even things out, I'm also going to give you guys 10 ways that the Steelers organization is not moving in the right direction as well. So before we get into the content today, make sure you guys click that thumbs up icon if you love this football team, no matter what. And that doesn't mean that you have to support the head coach or support the decisions that they make during the offseason. But if you love the Pittsburgh Steelers, if you bleed black and gold and you want to see this team get back to championship level, again, go ahead and click that thumbs up icon. Help out today's show to kick off today's program. So first up here, let's start with what's going right, because there's actually quite a bit of positivity surrounding this football team. And, there's definitely some good young pieces that are here in Pittsburgh that, I think that they're, there's definitely a lot of things to be positive and optimistic for when it comes to the long-term, big-picture outlook of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And we can start up front with the offensive line, which definitely seems to be on the right track at this point in time. And you have to give offensive line coach Pat Meyer his due, because he has helped develop this young offensive line into a pretty solid group. Now, I wouldn't necessarily call this a top 5 offensive line in the league right now, but, it's definitely better than the bottom 10 units that we have had here in Pittsburgh for many seasons at this point. And all the draft capital that they have invested at this very core group. They've spent first-round picks at left tackle and right tackle. They've spent early-round draft capital at center. All right, they brought in Isaac Seumalo in free agency as a very sturdy veteran, and then they spent a mid-round draft pick on Mason McCormick. And right now, it's all coming together pretty nicely. Now, left tackle is still a little bit of a question mark. Broderick was playing just okay before his injury, and then, of course, you're dealing with a rotation of backups at left tackle right now. But especially the left side, or the right side, I should say, of this offensive line, Zach Frazier, Mason McCormick, and Troy Fautanu are all bona fide starting level players at this point in their careers, and they're just getting started. All right, they're all on their rookie contracts. They're all going to be here for at least a few more seasons, and they're playing really high-end football, especially Fautanu, who's turned into one of the better pass-protecting right tackles in football, in my opinion, and he's got some of the quickest feet I've ever seen from a right tackle, and that excellent film that he had coming out of Washington is absolutely translating here in Pittsburgh. And, it's certainly a unit here where there's some question marks on the left side moving into future off seasons, but when it comes to the right side, that seems like it's completely locked up here for at least the next few years, and that is absolutely a positive takeaway from this season so far. Then also, sticking to kind of the offensive run game here, the running back duo is pretty darn good here in Pittsburgh, and honestly, I think they have a future as well. Not only did you sign Jaylen Warren to an extension this past offseason, so he's going to be here for a while, but he's had a pretty darn good season as this team's number 1 running back, and then Kenny Gainwell has really emerged as a legitimate number 2 running back option. And I think this running back duo, guys, is such a luxury, because they can both catch passes out of the backfield. They can both pass protect. They both are very shifty and can make people miss and make something out of nothing. Having 2 backs of this caliber is definitely a luxury that the Pittsburgh Steelers have. And even when the run game isn't necessarily going like it was last week against Baltimore, you can get them, the ball in space as pass catchers, and they can make big plays happen. Just look at that long touchdown to Jaylen Warren against the Baltimore Ravens. So having guys at running back there that can do everything and can do a lot of good stuff is definitely a positive. And then you've got a future at this position as well with Caleb Johnson. Now, Johnson obviously isn't playing a whole lot this year because of how well Warren and Gainwell have played this season, and certainly Caleb has some things in his game that he needs to develop before he gets trusted with a full-time starting role. I still believe in his future as this team's future number 1 running back, because I saw what he could do at Iowa, man, and I still think that his fit inside this Arthur Smith scheme is still a very good one. I think eventually he will join forces with Jaylen Warren in the Steelers backfield to create one of the best running back duos in the National Football League for quite a while. Then we get to the tight end position. And Darnell Washington has completely developed into an absolute beast. Everything that we thought that he could be coming out of Georgia, he's really starting to develop into. He's over 310 pounds, but can run like a deer. Nobody wants to tackle him out in space, especially linebackers and DBs. And he's a hell of a blocker, too. So not only is he one of the better check down options in the NFL because he can, chip, get out there into the flat. You can get him the football, and then he can run over 2 or 3 guys to pick up a decent gain if nothing is open down the field. But you can also put him out there on early downs where he is one of the more dominant blocking tight ends in the entire league. He's one of the only true X factors that the Pittsburgh Steelers have on offense right now. And, because of that, I think that he's going to get a second contract here in Pittsburgh, and he's going to be here for quite a while. He embodies Pittsburgh Steeler football, in my opinion. Then you get to the defensive side of the ball, and the pass rush is still in great shape. TJ Watt isn't having his normal kind of season where, he's approaching 20 sacks in a year, but he's still making a big impact. Teams are still double teaming him, which opens up opportunities for others. He's still an excellent run defender. And then on the interior, you have great players there when it's healthy. And then on the other side of TJ Watt, you got Alex Highsmith and Nick Herbig, both of which are excellent players in their own right. So the pass rush is still in great shape as long as this secondary can hold up long enough to give this pass rush some time. This is still one of the better pass rushes in the entire league. And then speaking on some of that talent up front, Derek Harmon looks like an absolute slam dunk as a first-round draft pick. He's going to be, the mainstay in the interior of the Steelers' pass rush for many years to come, it appears. That is, if he can stay healthy. And you guys can see the difference between Harmon being out there and not being out there. This run defense gives up about 100 more rush yards per game when Harmon isn't out there. So not only do you feel his impact in run defense, but also as a pass rusher, he's going to be one of the better players in the Steelers defense for a very, very long time. And the Steelers absolutely, swung, and, this one went out of the park. All right. This one was a fantastic pick from Omar Khan, in my opinion. And then also the defense creates lots of turnovers. In fact, you can make an argument that they haven't capitalized on some of the turnover opportunities that they have created this year, but they are still top 5 in turnover production yet again here in Pittsburgh. And, I think that certainly is a testament to Mike Tomlin, Terrell Austin, their turnover culture here in Pittsburgh. There's a reason why consistently this Pittsburgh Steelers defense is towards the top of the league in turnovers. It's because they teach it. They do a good job creating disruption, and they create an environment for quarterbacks and opposing offenses to make mistakes with the football. But then Payton Wilson is showing a lot of promise. Now, I don't think he's necessarily at like a star level right now. He shows flashes of star level play, but sometimes he's out of position in the run game. Sometimes he doesn't have great feel in zone coverage, but he's a hell of an athlete. He's shown some really good flashes this year, and I think that he has certainly cemented himself as a long-term starter at inside linebacker in this Steelers defense, which is a good thing. Then Jalen Ramsey, you bring him in to be a slot corner, but now you move him to safety, and he looks like a legit safety, which is really good news if you're a Steelers fan, because the Steelers signed him to a multiple-year contract this offseason after they traded for him. So he's going to be here for at least a couple more years, so you had to find a role for him that, fits his skill set, and I think safety fits his skill set at this point in his career very, very well. Then Deshaun Elliott, you get him locked up to a long-term extension this offseason. That looks like an incredible value right now. He's a hell of a player. Of course, he's out for the rest of the season likely, but to have him locked up for the future is great news. James Pierre and Brandon Echols, obviously great value signings during free agency this year. Pierre has turned into, a really good number 2 starting outside corner, and right now the Steelers might be thinking about bringing him back and giving him a brand new contract next offseason. And then Brandon Echols, you sign him this offseason for a pretty low number. He's turned into a legitimate starting slot corner. So outside of the Darius Slay signing that we'll talk about later in today's show, I think they did a pretty decent job of building the secondary. And that doesn't even include the trade for Kyle Duggar, which has been fantastic as well. And then also Joey Porter Jr. on the outside is looking really good, all right, and especially when it comes to man coverage, and that's always been his bread and butter, but, he's not getting as many penalties as he usually gets, and he's starting to find ways to be aggressive and physical without getting those holdings and those DPIs, and Teams are starting to not really throw his way, which is a really good sign of somebody that's a true lockdown number one corner in this league. JPJ's not all the way there yet. He does miss some tackles at times. Sometimes his zone feel isn't fantastic, but in terms of just straight up man-to-man coverage, which is what the Steelers like to do with him, he is one of the best in the National Football League right now. So up next here on Steelers Talk, what's not going so right? We just went over a lot of the reasons why Steelers fans can be positive about this football team, but in just a second here, we're going to tell you about some of the ways that maybe this team is falling short in their pursuit of getting back to a championship level pedigree. But before we get into the rest of today's show, man, let me know where you're at down there in the comment section. What is your optimism level for the Steelers organization at this point in time? Put it on a scale of 1, meaning this is the worst organization in professional football, to 10, meaning we are the best organization in professional football right now. Let me know what you guys think down there in the comment section. For today's pinned question, in just a second here, I'm going to tell you about our sponsor today at Harry's. And while I tell you about Harry's, give me a number between 1 and 10 down there in the comments. With that, let's dive over from our sponsor today at Harry's. And I don't have to tell you guys that maneuvering the men's razor space these days is a bit of a nightmare. The quality products are always super expensive. The refills are always equally as ridiculously expensive. And when you try and save a little bit of money, you go with a bargain brand, get stuck with dull razors that you can really only use once and that irritate your skin and even cut your skin at times. That's exactly why I switched to Harry's Plus, and I haven't looked back since. Harry's Plus has an advanced pivoting system to reach every corner of your face, refined blade tech for a closer, smoother shave, and a weighted metal handle, which is Harry's heaviest handle ever for added control and comfort. But I think the best part about Harry's Plus is how affordable it is. Harry's owns their own world-class blade factory in Germany, which means no outsourcing and no middlemen. And because they control the entire process from steel to shelf, they keep costs low and pass the savings on to you. And even after all this innovation that they've put into this product, Harry's Plus is still costs less than Gillette Fusion. And to put a bow on it all, if you don't love your shave, Harry's will make it right. No questions asked. Their risk-free trial means there's zero downside to giving them a shot. I've been using Harry's ever since I was in college, guys, because I love the affordable price tag. And then when I got, the barbershop quality shave that I got from their German-engineered blades, I never looked back. And now we're so excited to be working with Harry's here on Steelers Talk. So for a limited time only, our listeners can get Harry's Plus trial set for only $10 at harrys.com/chat. This set includes the all-new Harry's Plus razor, run to find 5-blade cartridge, a 2-ounce foaming shave gel, and a travel cover to protect your blades on the go. Just head on over to harrys.com/chat to claim this offer. And after you purchase, they'll ask where you heard about them. Please support our show and tell them that we sent you. A big thank you to Harry's for sponsoring today's edition of Steelers Talk. So let's go over some of the things that, the Steelers organization is still going wrong here, and getting wrong. We'll start with the quarterback play. Now, I know Rodgers, played a much better brand of football against the Ravens last week, and I'm hopeful that he can keep that up. But let's be completely honest here. The quarterback play has been pretty inconsistent this year. It was a pretty good start from Rodgers, and then he had about a 2-month stretch there where he wasn't playing as well. And now, you have this one game against the Ravens where he's playing a lot better. And, I really do hope that A-Rod continues to play like he did last week. And if so, that's going to be big for the Pittsburgh Steelers down the stretch. If you have Aaron Rodgers playing at that level where he's able to pinpoint accuracy, put that ball on his receivers down the field, 20-plus yards down the field, that's going to open up this Steelers offense a lot, all right? But, just after one game, you have to wonder if that was just, a one-hit wonder, and he's going to go back to not being as accurate down the field like he was the 2 months prior to that Ravens game. So, you still have to worry about that. But, at the end of the day, I do hope that he continues to play the way he did last week. But then, they also failed to replace George Pickens as the wide receiver 2 in this offense. Now, they've thrown a lot of different solutions at the wall. Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin III. Now they're trying out Adam Thielen and MVS. And hopefully they can figure something out there, and hopefully Thielen can emerge as this team's legit number 2 receiving option on the outside. But that was definitely a failure this offseason, is getting rid of George Pickens for what you gave him up for and then not getting a replacement that was suitable for this offense. It certainly limited DK Metcalf, in my opinion, because teams can double-team him, and he's not really the type of guy that can beat double teams. And if you don't have anybody else on the other side that can take some of that safety help away, all that different stuff, it's going to be difficult to have an efficient passing offense. But hopefully hopefully, like I said, guys like Adam Thielen, guys like MVS, some of these guys that are veterans, that know how to run routes correctly, that bring some size to the table and some physicality. That's pretty important as well. Hopefully these guys can open up some more opportunities for DK Metcalf, just like it happened last week against Baltimore. But also, I think this offense is overutilizing Jonnu Smith. This is a big way that I think Arthur Smith has kind of missed the mark, because he brings, of course, this organization brings in Jonnu Smith as a part of the Jalen Ramsey trade, and then they give him a contract, so I think they kind of feel obligated to play Jonnu Smith. But at the end of the day, man, he's just a body out there. Like, he's not somebody that the defense fears at all. He runs terrible routes. He's not particularly fast. Doesn't have particularly great hands. He doesn't block. Like, there's nothing that Jonnu Smith really does. You guys have heard me talk about Jonnu Smith on this channel all season long, yet he still has more reps than any other offensive weapon outside of DK Metcalf in the Steelers offense this year. That is unacceptable to me, especially with the production that he has. I mean, right now he's in Van Jefferson, Allen Robinson territory right now in terms of his receiving production. That is unacceptable to me, and he needs to be used less in this offense. And this kind of goes hand in hand with the Jonnu thing, but they don't use Pat Freiermuth enough. Now, last week, they gave Muth more reps than Jonnu Smith, so hopefully they're coming to the realization that Pat Freiermuth is the better option for them as their receiving tight end, and I hope down the stretch he's the guy playing tight end more often in terms of the receiving role compared to Jonnu Smith. But, like, you theoretically have one of the better tight end duos in the league in Darnell Washington and Pat Freiermuth on your football team, yet you don't utilize that combination nearly enough because you want to placate to Jonnu Smith, which is just absolutely ridiculous to me. And if Arthur Smith can just figure this out and use Pat Freiermuth more down the stretch and, give Jonnu Smith 10 or less snaps a game, I mean, that's how much he should be playing. Give Muth those snaps. I think that this offense and this passing offense is going to look a lot better because of it. Then we get to the defensive side of the ball here, and unfortunately they do play Keanu Benton out of position. And this has been something that's a legitimate criticism of Mike Tomlin and this coaching staff for many years. They play guys out of position, and they end up going somewhere else, and they play the position that they're supposed to play, and they ball out. And this is what I'm worried is going to happen with Keanu Benton, because he legitimately is a disruptive player. He's got really fast, violent hands that can get into the backfield very quickly, get quick wins, but what they ask him to do is hold the line of scrimmage as a nose tackle, and that's not his strength. He doesn't have a good anchor. He gets blown off the spot, and it's a big reason why this Steelers rushing defense has not played well, especially when Derek Harmon is not there to clean some stuff up. So I think, and I've been saying for years, you can't play Benton at nose tackle. They continue to do so, and this defense has paid the price for that. And they just don't have a legit nose tackle, and we've seen Terrell Austin and Mike Tomlin say in the past, in the modern NFL, there's not really a true nose tackle anymore. Well, that's kind of bullcrap, man. There's legitimate, there's legitimate traditional big body run stuffers in this league still. The Pittsburgh Steelers are just moving off of that position, and they're paying the price for that. They're getting duoed and double teamed into oblivion, and it's creating massive holes in the middle of their run defense. And they did have a legit nose tackle this year in Daniel Ekuale, and he got injured out for the season, and they haven't replaced him. So I would be in favor of the Steelers bringing in like a Linval Joseph or a true run stuffer that's still a free agent. But right now they do not have a legit nose tackle, and it's definitely hurting their run defense. And then also they don't use Nick Herbig enough, in my opinion. I think it should be more of a three-way, equal rotation between T.J. Watt, Alex Highsmith, and Nick Herbig. Now, I understand why the Steelers don't do that, because they're paying T.J. Watt $41 million per year to be out there whenever he's available, and then they're also paying Alex Highsmith about as much as any number 2 edge in the game. So when those two guys are healthy, I understand why those guys get a lot of the playing time. But Nick Herbig has been absolutely one of the most efficient pass rushers in the game this year. And, the numbers in terms of the total snaps that he gets, it's just not enough, in my opinion. Then we get to the second level here with Patrick Queen. And unfortunately, I don't think that has been a particularly good signing. I think they spent too much for an inside linebacker here. And I do think Patrick Queen really benefited from playing alongside Roquan Smith in Baltimore, which allowed him to play more free. In this Pittsburgh scheme, he's expected to be the Roquan Smith. He's expected to be the green dot, the guy that's communicating with everybody, and the guy that's expected to be in the right spot every single play, and unfortunately Queen just gets lost, especially in run defense. He's in the wrong gap very consistently. He takes over-aggressive pursuit angles, which lead to big runs if he can't make the tackle. And he's not good in pass coverage either. Teams very much attack him in zone coverage very consistently, and they can get away with that. So I don't think Patrick Queen is a particularly good inside linebacker, which sucks because you're paying him as much as you're paying him, and the fact that he's your green dot on this defense. And then also another veteran signing that they made in free agency recently, complete disaster. The Darius Slay signing, complete disaster. Now, obviously, it's good that you lucked out and you signed Asante Samuel Jr. and James Pierre, and you actually have pretty decent cornerback depth at this point. But, this isn't the first time the Pittsburgh Steelers brought in an absolutely cooked older veteran corner and then be a complete disaster. Just look at Patrick Peterson a couple years ago. Look at Cam Sutton last year. I mean, this Steelers team has very consistently brought in very old veteran corners over the last several years, and they just don't work out. They tried to make Darius Slay a man corner here in Pittsburgh, and he's a quarters corner at this point. It's just I can't really describe how inept that decision was, bringing in Darius Slay to play that style of defense. But that's Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin for you. And speaking of those guys, I don't think the defensive schematics have been great this year. All right. The Steelers kind of run what they run, and, it's not as vanilla as people want to make it out to be. In fact, at times, I think Terrell Austin tries to get too cute, and he puts his guys out of position to make plays because he wants to do these crazy post-snap rotations, where I think this defense is actually better when it plays more simple and it plays with two high safeties and you rotate out of that two high safety shell. But this Steelers team traditionally has always been, 3-4 defense with a 5-man front with a single high safety with a box safety in the box. And, this is Terrell Austin's final year of his deal. And, I think if this defense continues to falter and, let's say when Derek Harmon gets back and this defense is still giving up 150-plus rush yards a game to finish this year off, and the defense is the reason why this team couldn't reach its potential, then you can't bring him back next season, all right? And this is what the Steelers will do. They will allow their assistants' contracts to run out, and if, they're not meeting the standard at the end of the year, they will move on. So I actually think the one coaching change that we probably do see in Pittsburgh this offseason is we're going to have a new defensive coordinator. But with Mike Tomlin leading the charge as, the defensive mind and the defensive game planner here in Pittsburgh, you have to ask yourself the question, how much is it really going to change with a new defensive coordinator as long as Mike Tomlin is still the head coach here in Pittsburgh? So let me know what you guys think is the biggest issue that's plaguing the Pittsburgh Steelers organization, why they can't take that next step into Super Bowl contention. Type FO for front office and team building. Type C if you think it's the coaching. Type QB if you think it's the lack of good quarterback play. And if you think it's something else, let me know what you guys think down there in the comments section. Sound off down there in the comments. What is the biggest issue holding the Pittsburgh Steelers back right now? Let me know your opinion down there in the comments section. Now make sure you guys click that subscribe button because Ponzi and I will be live later today starting probably at either 5 or 6 p.m. Eastern time, either one of those, depending on when we can get the show ready for you guys. But make sure you guys click that subscribe button. Turn on those notifications so you know when we go live later this evening. It's going to be a really fun show with a lot of Steelers content for you guys to enjoy. So until next time, guys, here we go, Steelers.